All right, Stephanie, I think you can kick it off. Whenever you get to the Q&A part of this, students, if you could just chat beyond Barnard, and then I will ask the questions to all the MUFG representatives, okay? Stephanie, I think I can't hear you.
It might help if I unmuted my
There
phone.
you go.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Stephanie Bushweller. I obviously work for MUFG. I work in the capital markets group at our securities firm, and I'm joined by a number of colleagues here today. And thank you guys so much for joining. This is definitely different for us in terms of recruiting, but I'm really happy to see so many folks joining, and we appreciate your interest. What we're hoping to do today is really cover a couple of things. One, we'd like to review the details of our internship program. We do have a very active internship program, and we are full swing recruiting for the next class of interns. Then we thought it might be interesting for you, since you're interested in banking, it might be interesting for you to hear what the past 2 months have been like for a lot of our corporate clients. So we thought we'd run you through a hypothetical example of what a company's been through the past 2 months. And then we thought we'd finish off with a discussion of all the different groups that recruit interns at MUFG, and hint, hint, there are quite a few of them. So maybe it would make the most sense if, as you think of questions, if you want to chat them to Caitlin. After each section, maybe we'll pause and check with Caitlin to see if there are any questions that we can address. And then, we really would love for this to be as iterative as possible. One thing we definitely will do too, which I don't think we did ahead of time, but we'll make sure that we follow up so that each of you has all of our contact information so that we can stay in touch going forward, because we definitely very much want to be in touch with you guys. So with that, why don't we kick it off with the first section, the discussion of MUFG's Summer Analyst Program. And I'll introduce my colleagues, Darius Khosrowshahi, who's from our project finance team, Gordon Finn, who is with our global relationship management team covering tech, media, and telecom, and the newest member of our team, Stacy Kanelopoulos, who is currently a senior at Barnard, interned with us last summer, and will be joining us full-time this summer. So with that, maybe I'll turn it over to Darius.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephanie. And thank you, everyone, for making the time to be here. I hope everyone's safe and well. A little bit of background about myself. I work in the project finance team at MUFG. I graduated from Columbia College in May 2018, and I participated in the MUFG internship program in the summer of 2017, between my junior and senior years. And that was in the project finance team. I had a great experience, came back, and now I'm finishing my second year as an analyst. So I thought we'd begin with a bit of an overview of the internship program and how it's structured and sort of its general components. It follows a standard investment banking internship schedule. It's a 9-week program that's divided into a week of training and then 8 weeks where you're actually live on your desk or with your placement group. And the groups, which we'll get into later, are broadly divided between our corporate and investment bank and our MUFG securities side, which focuses more on the markets. And so the idea is that it's the first week of training will essentially give you basic, credit analysis, sort of financial analysis skills, as well as some soft skills like communication and how to, effectively function in an office. It's a pretty quick crash course, but anything you really need to know, you'll either learn there or on the job. Personally, I was a political science major, so I didn't have a finance background going in, and I had no trouble keeping up. And so after the first week of training, essentially for the next 8 weeks, you're going to be with whatever group you're on. And the idea is that the entire program is going to be a 9-week interview. So it's essentially for MUFG to see if you're a good fit for the team that you're in, and also for you to see, do I like what I'm doing here? Is this a good fit for me? And you have to look at the work you're doing, culture, a variety of different components. And The idea is that as much as possible, we want to simulate the experience of being a first-year analyst. So you'll start off with simple tasks at the beginning of the 8 weeks, and you'll work your way up, where at the end of it, you're essentially doing the same things you would be doing after graduation once you start real work. Because the idea is to really give, you're not, doing silly things like getting coffee, you're actually doing the real work, so you get a sense of what it is to actually be an analyst. Essentially the program, your workload is going to be split between, it's mostly on the desk or placement group that you're on, but it's also, there are tasks that are internship program specific, which involve sort of presentations, networking. Gordon's going to get into that a little bit later. But the real idea is that you get a broad understanding of MUFG as a bank. Because we're a large global institution, and even our footprint in North America is quite, covers a lot of different groups, and both on the banking and the market side, as I mentioned. The idea is that by doing the internship program, it's really a learning experience for you. So you'll want to get a better understanding of the specific group that you're in, but also by networking with, analysts and associates, managing directors, the head of the investment bank, you'll have the opportunity to sort of meet and discuss with these people to understand how all the different components fit together, and how sort of all the different groups collaborate to deliver the best solutions to our clients. And so with that, I think Gordon's going to go a bit into the specifics of the internship tasks. Gordon, I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Better. Awesome. So I actually was in the same data intern class as Darius. So I graduated in 2018, and we did our internship during the summer of 2017. And as Stephanie mentioned, I work in the corporate bank and the global relationship management team for technology, media, telecom. And that was also where I interned. So it kind of came full circle. In terms of the internship itself, when we talk about kind of the networking opportunities, there's a couple of different forms of that. So there's the opportunity to grab coffee or go into the office and meet senior people, whoever it is. You can go probably as high as you want and have that opportunity to have an open door policy and be able to talk to anything that interests you, or get a little bit more perspective on how their career was and what they did that they think, would be opportunistic for you. And then there's also the opportunity each week to have lunches with the whole intern class and a specific product area of the bank, where they'll come in, they'll teach you about that product area. They'll, give you a little bit of background information of something that they did and what their career was like. And then, finally they'll wrap it up with some Q&A, kind of just like this, where you guys will have a conversation back and forth on what you guys are interested in and what you thought was interesting about them. And then at the end of the internship, you'll have kind of a culminating project, if you will, and that's going to be a mock client pitch. So it's not too dissimilar to what you're doing on the day-to-day job. So you'll have somebody who's a relationship manager, so to speak, and you'll have a mock company, which is a real company. And you'll go out and go with a couple of your other interns and form a group. And basically that group will make a pitch to senior people that are going to play the client. And it's a great opportunity to be able to get experience working with a bunch of different product groups that aren't actually within your internship class. And I think that's a unique aspect of this internship in particular, is it gives you a lot of cross-pollination that, it may be a little bit of larger banks, sometimes may not happen as easily. I think they do a really good job of getting you out in front of different people and different opportunities and different situations, kind of a whole wide gamut. And I'll turn it over to Stacy now, who just did our internship program last year, and she'll hopefully be able to give you a little bit more recent review of kind of her experience that she's done so far.
Great, thank you, Gordon. So as was briefly mentioned, I interned at MUFG last summer. I'm currently a senior at Barnard. I studied Spanish and Latin American cultures. So I also, I don't come from a traditional finance background, but despite that, I really feel as though MUFG gave me all of the resources that I needed in order to successfully approach that learning gap that I had to face, through online resources, or just with all of the patience shown to all of the bankers that I worked with. They were all extremely patient when it came to answering my questions. What I really appreciated about the internship program was the emphasis that there is on networking and on taking advantage of that open door policy that Darius and Gordon briefly spoke about. You know, we are all really encouraged to reach out to more senior members of the bank and to hear about their experience working in finance and banking. And you gain a lot of really valuable insights by doing this. And I think, you know, that is a testament to the culture at MUFG. It's just like a very open culture, like a very positive culture. People really want to see you succeed and to do well, which is great. Gordon spoke a little bit about the group presentations. You know, there's that group presentation, as he said, it's a mock client pitch, but there's also an individual presentation. I know that each year the topic changes. For my intern class, we had to construct a 3-minute pitch on who we would have dinner with within the business or finance world and why. And what was great about this was that we also had the opportunity to present our presentations ahead of time to members of the bank individually before we presented it on a larger scale in front of the panel of judges. And that's great. You know, that is also just another example of how everybody really just wants to see you succeed and do well. You have opportunities throughout the summer to network not only with other members of the bank, but also within your own intern class. There's a lot of focus on building that cohort of interns or that cohort of support of peers your age who you're going to be working with in the years to come. So I also really appreciated that about my summer intern experience. The time really goes by so fast. You know, you're very busy. You're always given work to do, tasks to do in order to build up your skill set. I never had any sort of busy work, or, you know, I never had to complete those typical intern tasks that you hear horror stories of people having to go get coffee and stuff. Like, it was not like that at all. So with a combination of having to do tasks that an analyst would do, and on top of grabbing coffee with members of senior members of the bank, in addition to the talks with different departments, it just really created a really holistic intern experience for me. I had like a great internship experience. Really, it was very holistic, and like I said, it went by so fast, and I'm really excited to come back over the summer to start as an analyst. Yeah, so.
We are very excited to have you come back to start full-time with us. Maybe, and I'm sure that you all have questions with respect to the internship program. And I do know that Francesca's got a hard stop at 1:30. So if it's okay, what I'd like to do is just quickly run you guys through a a true life scenario of a hypothetical company, and what the experience has been like for them over the course of the past 2 months. And then maybe after that, we'll pause and we'll open it up for questions. So for the true life experience of our hypothetical company, I want to introduce a couple of my colleagues. Maheen Beg is on the line. She works with me in capital markets at the securities firm. And also Rose White is on the line. She is in our loan capital markets group, also at the securities firm. So Maheen, maybe I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Stephanie, and hello to everybody. And it's good to meet all of you virtually, and hopefully at some point soon, fingers crossed, we'll actually be able to meet in person. You know, I've been up to Barnard's campus a few times and always really enjoy talking with all the students. So hopefully I'll have an opportunity to do that again soon. But as Stephanie said, I work in the capital markets group, and specifically I sit on a bond desk, which essentially means that I help companies raise capital for various purposes. It could be because they're trying to buy another company, or they're trying to buy back shares, to grow capital expenditure in the bond markets for tenors that are longer than a year. But anyway, we'll get into that later. But companies have various ways in which they can raise capital. But today, and for this example specifically, we're going to be focused on the fixed income side of things, which basically means that we're not going to be talking about the stock market, we're not going to be talking about equities, but specifically we're going to be focused very much on credit. At a very high level, and for simplicity's sake, companies can raise capital in the debt market in 3 different markets. The first one is the commercial paper market, and this is something that Stephanie in particular is focused on. She heads up the CP desk at MUFG, but it's a short-term funding market where basically debt is for very short maturities from overnight to 397 days. And it's typically utilized by companies when they're trying to fund their short-term obligations, such as accounts payable, payrolls, inventories, etc. So really short-term obligations. The second is the bank market, which Rose is going to be speaking to you a little bit about. But this is basically kind of a short-term to up to 5-year maturity type of funding market. And again, typically used by institutions for funding sort of short-term obligations or to bridge to a longer-term takeout in the capital markets, which is what I focus on. So the MOD market, which is my market, is I help raise companies when they're looking to raise debt, which is minimum 1 year, but can go up to, 60 years, 70 years, whatever. But so it's basically the long-term kind of funding, and it's to match long-lived funding obligations such as capital expenditures or acquisitions, etc. So today, as Stephanie mentioned, we're going to be walking you through a hypothetical example. We're going to be talking to you about how this recent pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, has affected the markets and how in particular it's affected this hypothetical company called Diana Prince Corporation. In this example, Diana Prince Corporation is a client of MUFG's, and it's approached MUFG to help with liquidity because, it's faced with this crisis, and this crisis has had an impact on all 3 of these markets. So it's come to MUFG in order to help them to get liquidity. And we're going to be talking specifically about the 3 markets that I mentioned earlier. So with that, why don't I turn it over to Stephanie, who will talk to you about her market, which is the commercial paper short-term market, how it got impacted, and how eventually we've helped Diana Prince Corporation.
Sure. Happy to talk about it. And for those of you who don't understand the Diana Prince reference, I would encourage you after this call to Google it. But Diana Prince Corporation, we'll say in our hypothetical example, to Maheen's point, they use the commercial paper market, that's the short-term debt market, to finance their working capital needs, to make their mortgage payments, to make their payroll. They also use it to just reduce their overall cost of capital because for just about every company out there, the commercial paper market is going to be a company's cheapest cost of financing. So we'll say hypothetically that Diana Prince Corporation has $3 billion of commercial paper that they've issued in the market. And they're going to manage those maturities. They don't want all that debt maturing on one day. So they will have their commercial paper spread out with maturities between tomorrow and 397 days, to Maheen's point. And what typically happens in the commercial paper market is that a company will pay off the commercial paper that they have maturing on any given day by issuing new commercial paper. And they use the proceeds from the new commercial paper issuance to pay down the maturing commercial paper. We call that rolling CP. So companies just, they put Diana Prince had their $3 billion in the market and they've been rolling it for years. But then here comes COVID-19. And the investors in the commercial paper market are very much investors who are looking for preservation of principal. They need to know that they have access to their cash when they need their cash. And so what started happening with COVID-19 is those investors started getting very nervous about what is their own liquidity position? How is this going to impact them? And of course, they're questioning, how is this going to impact Diana Prince Corporation? And so what happened was commercial paper investors started hoarding cash and not using that cash to invest in the new issue commercial paper. So all of a sudden, Diana Prince Corporation, they have commercial paper that's maturing tomorrow. When they try to reissue it, it starts getting very, very, very expensive. And we call that the credit spread started really gapping out for them. And then investors just stopped. So Diana Prince Corporation is now at a point where they cannot issue new commercial paper if they wanted to, but they still have almost $3 billion of commercial paper that's maturing over the course of the next year to 13 months. So what does Diana Prince Corporation do? They call our colleague Rose White.
Hi, everyone. So I cover the bank loan market, as Maheen and Stephanie mentioned. So, a company like Diana Prince, if they have a commercial paper program, they'll typically also have what we call a revolving credit facility to backstop that CP program. So what a revolving credit facility is, or what we also call a revolver, is basically it acts like your credit card. You can borrow and repay to have access to that facility. And companies that have this revolver backstop have it in the event that they cannot access the CP market. And so that's exactly what happened to Diana Prince in our example. So as Stephanie mentioned, the CP market seized, so the company drew down on their full $3 billion revolver to repay their outstanding CP maturities. However, if you draw on a fully drawn revolver doesn't provide a company with additional liquidity sources going forward. So what do? They hit the capital markets, or they look to the capital markets to repay those revolver outstandings so they have that flexibility and additional liquidity going forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Maheen to talk about how the company accessed the capital markets.
All right, so as Rose mentioned, this company all of a sudden drew down on its revolver. So it's got $3 billion that it needs to finance in the capital markets. But just like what happened in the commercial paper market, the longer term capital credit markets were also deeply impacted by the uncertainty associated with COVID-19. And as a result, the investors in the long-term credit markets also started to hoard cash, i.e., they were not really willing to take the risk or buy the bonds of companies when they really didn't know if, will this company survive, what will its revenues look like, etc. And even when they were compelled to buy, it became extremely expensive. So for example, if Diana Prince's normal way cost of capital for 5-year debt is, let's just say it's 2%, now all of a sudden it's up to 4.5%. So it's more than doubled. And a company, obviously that impacts its bottom line. But in the first place, all of a sudden the long-term credit markets also came to a standstill. And you know what? They weren't able to come and raise the capital in the long-term credit markets. So again, they turned back to the bank market to look for other solutions until they can gain access to the credit markets. So back to you, Rose.
So they came back to us and said, how can I get additional sources? So in addition to a revolving credit facility, a company can also put in place a term loan facility, which is similar to a car loan or a mortgage. It's fully drawn on day one, and then you're expected to pay it over time. So companies came back to the bank market and said, I am looking for additional capital. How can I, or additional liquidity, how can I do that until the capital markets come back? So they've come back to us. We provide them either additional revolver or additional term loan. But with all of the companies coming back, now the cost of funds and pricing has also gone up in the bank markets because capital is so dear. So now pricing has gone up, and that's where the Fed comes in and helps with the liquidity in the market. And the first one to come back is CP. And then following that is the bond market.
Yeah. So just very quickly, what the Federal Reserve did, every bank is regulated by the Federal Reserve. And so we're all reporting to the Fed, hey, our corporate clients don't have market access. They're drawing on their credit facilities. They're asking us for more bank balance sheet. And the Federal Reserve, I describe it as they sent the cavalry running over the hill. I mean, they just hit the market with all kinds of backstops. First ones they announced were for the commercial paper market. They provide 2 facilities, one for the biggest investors in commercial paper, which are money market funds, they effectively allowed the money market funds to go directly to the Fed for liquidity if they need liquidity. And they created something called the Commercial Paper Funding Facility, which allows companies and also banks, but this really is a corporate crisis as opposed to a bank crisis. It allows companies to go straight to the Fed for financing. Now, it's not that the Fed is intending to actually finance everybody. They don't want to. But the way that they price these facilities encourages people to stay in the markets. So these two facilities together helped, as I describe it, they help to start grease the wheels of the commercial paper market. And we're not back to normal yet, but I will say that it has worked phenomenally well, and that commercial paper pricing has really reined in considerably, and all of our corporate clients now that want to tap the commercial paper market are doing so and using the proceeds to repay Rose and the bank for drawing on the revolving credit facility. Maybe I'll turn it back to Maheen to talk about the term debt markets.
Sure. So like the CP market, where the Fed was continuing to provide additional backstops, the same happened in the long-term credit markets, where on March 23rd, the Fed basically established two corporate credit facilities, the primary and the secondary market corporate credit facilities, which essentially acts as a backstop for issuers in the event that they don't have access to the primary market or liquidity dries up in the secondary market, then the Fed will step in. But as Stephanie said, it is really not meant to be utilized. It's really to provide kind of the sort of confidence to investors that a market will be there, and that, you know, that they should continue to buy credit and provide liquidity. So basically, right after this announcement, credit costs in my market began to decline rapidly. So I think I mentioned to you earlier that in this example, Diana Prince, in normal circumstances, they were able to raise funds at 2%. When the COVID pandemic crisis started first occurring and before the Fed stepped in, credit costs jumped up 2.5%. So for this company now, long-term funding is at 4.5%. But right after the announcement, credit costs began to decline rapidly. And now it's really only up 0.8%. So we find that the credit markets are now back open to Diana Prince Corporation, and it is able to raise 5-year debt at 2.8%, because now credit costs have come back down, because the investor community in my market has confidence that the Fed is going to be backstopping any sort of credit or liquidity crunch, and really provide the confidence that, you know, companies can continue to function normally through this crisis. So we're back up, open up again. Diana Prince is able to raise this debt, 5-year debt, and immediately go back to Rose's market and pay down the term loan that it had raised in the interim at a very high cost in order to bridge to an eventual credit market takeout. Back to you, Steph.
Okay, perfect. And can I just pause and see if we have Francesca? I think we do. Okay, so Rose and myself and Maheen, we are what we call product bankers. So we all have expertise in a very specific area. Every one of our corporate clients is managed by what we call a relationship banker. And their job really is really the conductor of the orchestra, you know, leveraging all of the bank's services and products and resources to help solve the problems for their clients. So we saw, I know Francesca's got a hard stop. So Francesca is with our global relationship management team, and she specifically works with healthcare companies. So we thought it would be interesting for you to hear what her experience has been like assisting her corporate clients through all of this.
Hey, Stephanie. Yeah, so I'm already a couple minutes late, so I'm going to make this quick. Apologies in advance. Kind of as my colleagues were walking through the example they went through with Diana Prince, the various steps in which our clients come back to us with a credit ask, even, you know, when they draw on the revolver to notify us that they're doing that, or when they ask for a liquidity line like a term loan. Of course, they work very closely with the syndication team. but they also, first and foremost, kind of come to the relationship manager to talk about their needs, and so that we can coordinate everything, as Stephanie said. Relationship management, as the title kind of implies, is really about the relationship that we build with our clients. We're the largest foreign bank in the US. In healthcare specifically, we were number 5 in healthcare IG space, investment grade space in 2019. So our customers really look to us for guidance and for support. And these trying times are exactly the situations in which we show that as MUFG, we're a strong relationship bank, we're a strong counterparty, and we're there to support our clients with, financing support, strategic support. What we're now seeing a lot in the in our client space, I'll speak to healthcare, but I know this is probably overarching across multiple industries, is after that first round of kind of liquidity asks and tapping the market for different sources of capital, now we're looking at amendment requests coming through because of covenant relief, as companies are kind of stretching their balance sheet and maybe are running low on cash and are concerned about maybe running into some of their covenants. And so in a couple of words, that just means that they're coming to us, explaining the situation. And again, as the relationship manager, we are there to tell them, we know that the next couple of quarters are going to be rough, and we are going to support you through that and give you some relief, and then go back to, the way things were once everything picks up again. And so that's kind of in a nutshell what we try to do as relationship managers, is show us our support to our clients and connect them with all our product partners so that they can find the best solution for their needs. And with that, I have to jump.
Okay. Thanks, Francesca.
Right. Of course. Goodbye.
Appreciate it. The relationship management teams are, listen, we're all busy, but they're definitely very busy these days. So maybe, why don't we take a pause there, and I'll just check with Caitlin to see if there are any questions that we might be able to address at this point.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions here. So I'll start with the first one. The student says she's a current junior, and I was wondering if I was able to intern next summer, if I plan on taking a master's after my senior year. Some companies only want juniors, so I just wanted to know if MUFG is open to seniors moving into master's programs.
Darius, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So the program is exclusively for the summer between junior and senior year. So right now we'd be looking at sophomores who are going to be juniors in the fall for the coming summer. So that's not an opportunity we would have at the moment, unfortunately.
All right.
What I would point out is that our hiring needs are constantly moving, shaking, and changing. And despite the fact that everyone's working from home, we do have open positions for which the bank is actively recruiting. So I would encourage you to keep an eye on our website, and when you're done with school, to check and see if there are positions that that you might be interested in. Because like I said, we post new positions almost daily. Thanks, Caitlin.
We have a couple more. This individual is from Brazil. They would like to know if MUFG sponsors visas for international students.
So at the moment, given the general climate around sponsorship being driven by the current administration, I think MUFG, along with a lot of other banks, are not in a position to be able to extend that sponsorship. So at the moment, the internship is only available for people who have work authorization already.
I would toss out there too that we do have a presence in Sao Paulo. And so if you're interested in potentially interning in our Sao Paulo office, then please reach out to me and I'll make sure you get connected with the right folks.
Great. The next question, can you please talk about the mock client pitches, what the structure is and what type of research goes into it?
Sure. So the basic concept behind that is that it takes place at the end of the internship. And the idea is that it's an existing client of the bank it's someone that we already have a lending or product or some sort of relationship with. And the idea is that it's an opportunity for you to showcase how whatever group that you've spent the summer in is important and relevant to that client, and how your team works with the other teams in the bank when we face clients. And so the preparation, you can work with the people who actually cover that client, because they're existing clients of the bank. You can speak to the relationship managers and the product bankers and all the different teams to sort of say, you know, what does this company look like? Where are their needs? And sort of think of a hypothetical product or situation to pitch to them. And the idea is that the expertise that you're going to demonstrate in the pitch is what you pick up over the course of the internship. So it's just sort of, it gives you an opportunity to demonstrate understanding. It's not necessarily something where you have to go out and learn something completely new.
Yeah. I can speak a little bit about my experience doing our mock client pitch. I interned on the Latin American corporate banking group. So the client that we were given was a Chilean company. So my like the VP on my team put me in touch with the relationship manager in Chile, who has direct communication with this Chilean company. And it was also it was just like another networking opportunity, really, because all of the other team members of my group, they all like reached out to the different members of the groups that they were interning on in order to get more knowledge of the I guess the products that MUFG offers to these clients. So it was a great learning experience.
Okay. Caitlin, are there other questions?
There are a few more coming in now. To answer this one question, yes, you will receive contact information from these individuals from MUFG. I have two others. Is MUFG willing to relocate international analysts to available offices once their OPT expires or they can't get a work permit?
So my understanding is that that is case by case. There isn't, because that's sort of an extraordinary circumstance, there isn't like a blanket policy, but I can say that from my experience, I think that when someone is a good fit at the bank and has had a positive experience, and MUFG wants to, you know, obviously has invested time in this person, and the person has invested time with MUFG, I believe that they generally try to do everything that they can to accommodate the specific, you know, visa needs in order to try and find a place. So I know there was someone in our internship class who was in a similar situation, and HR essentially did everything that they could to sort of see, you know, can we place them in another country? Can we place them in another division? So to the extent possible, I would say yes. But obviously it's case by case, and, you know, as it's availability based, that sort of.
Our last question for right now, how can applicants best prepare themselves for the internship program?
For the internship program, or for the process to, like, the interview process for the program?
I think.
Does anyone, whoever asked the question?
If anyone wants to chime in. Probably both.
Or maybe
both.
one, or maybe you just, yeah, Darius, maybe just start with prepping for the interview process, the application and interview process.
Yeah, so I mean, so I guess sort of working backwards, I'd say preparing for the program itself, there's nothing that you really need to do to prepare. You want to just sort of, you know, show up with enthusiasm, desire to learn, you know, the good work ethic, those sorts of things, but everything that you need to know in terms of, you know, modeling skills, financial analysis, you know, what your group does, you're going to pick that up on the job. That's really the purpose of the internship. If you came in sort of knowing all of that, you would have, you know, you'd be a full-time analyst, you wouldn't be an intern. And so as far as the internship program goes, no real prep required. For interviews, I would say that the best, there's a couple good things to do, but the best resource that you have are the other students on campus. So let's say you know someone who recently, is a junior, just went through the interview process, or someone who, just completed their internship program. So, actually has both interview and internship experience. Reach out to them, try to set up a few minutes to talk, maybe run through a mock interview. On the technical side, there's a couple guides floating around. I think they're updated from year to year, but sort of like 400 questions for investment banking interviews. That sort of thing is really good to prepare, like DCFs. These are sort of basic, broad interview questions. It's not something that you would really know as a student, so you'd have to study for it. But the idea is just to sort of show that you've prepared. But MUFG's interviews, I'd say, are more behavioral rather than technical. And so to that extent, the best thing that you can do is just prepare your CV and prepare your own story. So it's something that you're going in with this A4 sheet of paper, and it has all the information and experience that you've accumulated. You know that you should be able to essentially answer any question coming off that piece of paper. Everything else is sort of fair game, but if you get asked something about, what was a past work experience? What was this community service experience? Can you tell us something about, your interests or whatever it is that's on your CV? Always sort of, having those answers prepared, knowing it inside and out, and also being able to think, okay, these are my 1, 2, 3, defining characteristics or, main like strengths. How can I connect these experiences to that? For me, for example, I had worked at a private equity firm the year before I did banking. And then the year before that, I had worked at I worked in sort of corporate strategy. And so the way I did it was I constructed sort of a story saying, I tried corporate strategy. I liked the financial world, but I didn't want to be on, the client side. I wanted to be on the banking side. Then I did private equity. That's buy side rather than sell side. I enjoyed what I was doing, but I wanted to look at debt instead of equity. And hence I've ended up at banking. So sort of, constructing that narrative is just one of the best things you can do to prepare, because when someone asks you, why do you want this job? Why are you good for this job? You don't just sort of say, it looked exciting, or, they had a great Zoom session, but there's actually, a firm rationale for, I'm supposed to be here. If that makes sense.
I can just interject a bit to throw something in for Beyond Barnard. For the students, we do have the Finance Focus program, which I do run. We will do mock interviews with you where we will go over a lot of what was just said. And, I do a lot of that. I was a trader on Wall Street. I ran a desk for 25 years, so I have a fairly good knowledge. So students, make your appointments, not just me, but we have a lot of programming with Advanced Excel and the Empirical Reasoning Center. There's a lot of assets that you can use. And in fact, my first trading company when I first started was Mitsubishi International. So I do have an
Good choice, Greg. Good choice. Maybe with that, why don't we take a little bit of a deeper dive into the opportunities that MUFG offers for summer interns. And to do that, I want to introduce our colleagues, James Zhang. James is with our Structured Products Group, and Jessica Gonzalez. Jessica is with our Financial Institutions Treasury Group. So you guys want to take it over? I think you might be muted, Jessica.
Is that better?
Much better.
Okay, sorry about that. So I'm Jessica Gonzalez. I'm a Treasury Relationship Manager within our transaction banking team. I cover the financial institutions industry, specifically funds, private equity funds, hedge funds, and fund administrators. So I've been with MUFG for about 4 years. Prior to that, I was at JP Morgan for 8 years in transaction banking. So we're kind of here to dive into the various internship opportunities. There is a list of the groups, so there's a ton of them on there. So we're going to talk to a few of those groups. Just like kind of the group that's here presenting to you today, we have internship opportunities all over the bank. And we're looking for interns who have a diverse set of skill sets. We're not only focused, I think it's kind of been talked about, we're not only focused on students with finance degree. I had an American Studies majors, and I've been in banking for almost 13 years. So, but we, are looking for people who are willing to work hard, learn, and be proactive. So I'll turn it over to James to talk about some of the opportunities that we have here.
Thank you, Jessica. I think if you look through the list, the bank is a very, has a lot of different groups, and also specifically with kind of asset-based products groups. So some of the groups, I'll just go over really quickly. And these are all, mostly debt-based bank lending or capital markets groups in specific asset sectors. Which means that these groups look at specific type of assets and they lend against these assets, or they structure transactions with these assets as the collateral. So some of the groups, commodities, structured trade finance, has to do with obviously looking at commodities as an asset class, financing trades, financing commodities, receivables. There's supply chain finance, which is looking at the account receivables of corporations. So that is also a very, very large sector. As companies have receivables, they want to monetize receivables, and they look at banks or investors to give them the capital to fund those receivables. Leasing and asset finance, that's actually a very interesting area. It has to do with leases, but hard assets such as aircrafts, real estate, and other types of transportation assets. So MUFG is actually a very, very large, has a very large presence in leasing and asset finance, as we have different subsidiaries to do with leasing. And if you look in the news, we also purchased a specialty aircraft finance, a transportation finance lender called DVB late last year, which specifically for aircraft financing. So MUFG is has a very large franchise in aircraft financing and transactions. But obviously, that's a very interesting area and very stressed area with the current situation with COVID-19, and it's unfortunate, but it's also very interesting times as we work with our clients in the aircraft airlines as well as aircraft lessors. Project finance, you heard Darius who works in that team. Project finance has to do with funding different type of infrastructure projects, renewables, industrial, energy, and it's not just lending against it, but it's actually helping to the development of these renewable type of projects. And the last one, securitized products, structured products, the group that I work in, this is kind of a little bit broader, not specifically on one or two asset classes, but it's kind of across asset classes. It's really lending against different type of assets. You probably heard of, asset-backed securities, collateralized loan obligations, CLOs. It's been in news a lot. So those are, the two big products that that my team helps to create. And we also work with the sales and trading teams as well across in the bank to sell the securities to the investors. So this is credit sales and trading, the rate sales and trading. They're involved in anything that has to do with interest rates, and that includes FX as well. So that also ties to our corporate customers. When they want to hedge or they want to do certain foreign FX transactions as well. And the other is the corporate derivatives, foreign exchange sales. That's, I guess, the same thing for FX sales and corporate derivative, which actually has to do with corporate hedging. So a lot of our corporate customers, they enter into interest rate hedges to hedge their interest rate exposure. If they're taking a loan from the bank, Usually that's a floating rate loan, and they most of the time they always hedge that, by via interest rate swap or interest rate cap. So with that, I would say, just kind of basically across all these asset classes, I would say MUFG is, has a very has a leadership franchise in, across all these asset classes. We're probably top 10. I think project finance, we're one of the top players in project finance, in securitized product as well, leasing asset finance. MUFG has a very, very large presence in all these different products. And take it back to you, Jessica.
Thanks, James. And just to touch on a couple more of the groups that we have opportunities in. Obviously, we heard from Francesco with the corporate banking area and the relationship management team. We also have a corporate advisory team. It kind of advises on financing activities for M&A, sponsor finance, recapitalization, other financing situations. The group functions within the bank to execute event-driven financing, as well as coordinate and support internal processes for complex transactions. There's also our supply chain finance team. They work closely with the bank's corporate banking clients to focus on enhancing clients' working capital, account payable solutions, and the traditional supply chain finance programs. And then we have transaction banking, which is my world. In transaction banking, we work with the treasury departments of our clients to provide efficient cash management solutions for needs such as working capital and trade risk management. We assist our clients in managing their cash flows across all industries, not just financial institutions. We're big in the Japanese corporate banking space, as well as just the regular corporate space. As well as retail. Well, I guess from my experience, just to give you an example, I work, like I said before, with a lot of funds. So when a PE firm is about to launch a new fund, they come to us and they have to open an account in order to collect their subscription fees and pay out redemptions. But we also have a host of different products that we use to sell to our clients to support their daily cash operational needs, kind of that payables, receivables. But I guess in the basic sense of the term, if you've ever received a direct deposit from your employer, that is a transaction banking product that was used. And transaction banking is a core driver of the deposit balances and generates sizable fee income for MUFG. So obviously there's a whole host of placement groups that we have. And if you want to learn more about any one of them on the list or any of the ones that we've talked to, we're going to provide you our contact information. And we'll be happy to put you in touch with someone that works at one of those groups that you can kind of get a better understanding of their day-to-day and take a deeper dive into exactly what those areas do. So with that, I'll hand it back to Stephanie.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, guys. I realize we're coming up on 2 o'clock really quickly. So maybe, Caitlin, I'll just ask, are there any other questions?
Currently, there's no questions. I can give it a minute, a couple seconds to see if any students have questions. For all the students who are here, the placement group information is on Handshake. It'll also be emailed to you again, along with everyone's contact information, probably later today.
Okay. And I would reiterate too that we really do want to hear from you guys, and we want to stay in as close as touch as we can, given the fact that everyone is working and studying remotely. So Caitlin and Greg, like they said, they'll pass around our contact details, and we really do encourage you to reach out to us. We're happy to help in any way, answer questions, give more color about the various groups that we recruit for. And even if a group you're interested in is not represented by any of the bankers on this call, we're all pretty well connected internally at the bank. And so we can make sure that you get introduced to the right folks. So that's basically it from our side. Thank you so much for dialing in. And Greg, Caitlin, thank you guys so much for hosting this and pulling this together.
It was really
Anytime.
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Again, students will be in touch with all their
And
information,
hopefully
okay?
next time we'll be on campus.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be great.
Okay, everybody.
All right, thank
Stay
you
safe
again.
and stay well.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.
Bye, everyone.